The black SUV was still there the next morning. Same spot, same tinted windows. No plates. Jalen noticed it from the living room window while tying his hoodie. He didn't panic. Instead, he pulled out his phone, tapped the screen twice, and took a slow breath. "Camera's rolling," he said to himself. "Let them watch." Inside the Department of Justice, Agent Holt paced the hallway, with a case file gripped tight in her hand. The deeper they went into Judge Whitford's history, the uglier it got. There were sealed expungements never filed properly, missing transcripts, plea deals that vanished into the system. But one case, one name, kept surfacing in whispers and redacted files. Marcus Delane, 17 years old, arrested in 2006, charged with a felony, then disappeared from the system entirely. No conviction, no release, no record of where he ended up. He was never seen again. Later that afternoon, Jalen met Agent Holt at a secure location, a community center turned temporary ops base. Walls lined with court files and corkboards, timelines, photographs, names. "This is bigger than we thought," she said quietly. "Whitford isn't just biased. He's protected." Jalen leaned over the table. "By who?" Agent Holt tapped the folder, labeled Delane. Whitford was just a gatekeeper. But someone else was running the prison contracts, the juvenile placements, the private legal consultants, and getting paid every time a kid didn't walk out free. She turned the page. A familiar name stared back at him. Raynard Whitford, retired federal judge. Whitford's older brother, and the CEO of Apex Correctional Services, a private juvenile detention company. "Your judge," she said, was sending black teens to facilities run by his own brother. Jalen felt his stomach twist. This wasn't bias. This was business. He looked up. "How many?" Agent Holt didn't answer. She just opened a box full of files. Each folder had a name, a photo, a sealed outcome. Dozens, maybe more. Meanwhile, across the city, Malcolm Whitford sat in his darkened office. The courthouse was quiet. He hadn't been officially removed, but no new cases had come his way in a week. He poured a glass of whiskey and stared at a photo on the wall. His brother, Raynard, smiling. A lifetime ago, they used to believe in justice. Now it was just survival. His phone buzzed. A single message. "Jalen's getting too close. Handle it." That night, Jalen sat in his bedroom, reviewing court footage on his laptop. Old trials, transcripts, things that didn't add up. He wasn't looking for proof anymore. He was looking for patterns. How Whitford asked questions, when he silenced objections. How often he interrupted black defendants versus white ones. It wasn't just prejudice. It was precision. He was curating outcomes. And then, Jalen saw something. In a 2017 trial, the judge mentioned the defendant's brother by name. Casual, offhand. Another message followed. Except that name matched one of the guards at Apex Correctional. Another connection. Jalen's eyes narrowed. Minutes later, he got a text. Blocked number. "You think you're exposing secrets, but you don't know the half of it. Check your front door." Jalen froze. He stepped to the window. The SUV was gone. He opened the front door slowly. A yellow envelope sat on the steps. Inside, a grainy photograph. A boy, black, maybe 17, handcuffed, bruised, being dragged through a hallway. On the back, one handwritten note. "Marcus Delane, still alive." That night, Jalen didn't sleep. He just stared at the photo. Because if Marcus was still alive, that meant the system hadn't just failed him. It had hidden him. The next morning, Jalen met Agent Holt outside the community center with the photo in hand. But as he approached the door, he paused. It was ajar. No guards outside. Inside, files were scattered across the floor. Lights flickering. Agent Holt's laptop was smashed. And on the wall, written in black marker, "Stay out of this." Jalen backed out slowly, heart thudding. Someone had made it clear. They were watching. They were willing to silence anyone who got too close. As Jalen stepped onto the sidewalk, phone shaking in his hand, another message came through. This time, no text, Just a location pin. A warehouse on the edge of the city. No sender. Just the time. Midnight. Tonight. The warehouse smelled like rust, silence, and secrets. Jalen Carter stood on a flickering bulb, staring at the man they said no longer existed. Marcus Delane, once a teenager like Jalen, now older, scarred, and forgotten by the system that swallowed him whole. But tonight, Marcus wasn't invisible anymore. Moments later, the building flooded with flashlights, voices, and heavy boots. Agent Holt and her federal team stormed through, guns drawn, surveillance rolling. 2 men in suits, connected to Apex Correctional, were arrested on site. One tried to run, didn't make it far. Marcus was taken into protective custody, his wrists finally free of the cuffs he'd worn for nearly half his life. And Jalen? He stood still in the chaos, watching it all, not with fear, but with purpose. Back at DOJ headquarters, evidence flowed like a broken dam. Sealed juvenile cases, financial kickbacks, a secret transfer system run by Raynard Whitford, Judge Whitford's brother, funneling black and brown kids into private detention centers for profit. Kids like Marcus. Kids like Jalen's cousin, Deshaun Carter. Files were found. Names reappeared. Even whistleblowers, former staff and guards, stepped forward once they saw Jalen on the news. The system had finally been forced to see itself. But the final blow came from inside the courthouse. 2 days after the warehouse raid, Judge Malcolm Whitford was ordered to appear before a federal disciplinary panel. He wore the same robe, the same smirk. But the room didn't laugh this time. This time, Jalen sat in the front row. Agent Holt stood before the panel and laid it all out. A 30-year pattern of judicial misconduct, bias, and corruption. She presented bank statements, surveillance, testimonies. Then she called her final witness. Jalen. He stepped forward. Calm, precise, unshaken. He didn't give a speech. He told a story about how he was laughed at in court, about how the system underestimated him, about Marcus, about Deshaun, about the kids who never made a home, not because they were guilty, but because they were profitable. He ended with a single sentence. You wear the robe, but I carry the verdict. The room was silent. Even Judge Whitford's mouth had nothing left to say. The verdict was swift. Removed from the bench. Permanently disbarred. Facing federal charges. Justice didn't roar that day. It whispered, but the echo was louder than anything the courtroom had ever heard. 3 weeks later, Jalen visited Marcus, now free and starting over. The man was older, but hope had returned to his eyes. Thought no one was ever going to find me, he said. Jalen shook his head. We never stopped looking. They just made it hard to see. And then, finally, Jalen received a call he'd been waiting years for, from a shelter in Arizona. A social worker said they'd found someone confused, scared, but alive. A boy. No ID. Just one name he kept repeating. Jalen. That night, Jalen flew out and walked into a quiet counseling room. And there, sitting on a small couch, eyes wide and unsure, was Deshaun Carter. Taller now, thinner, but still Jalen's cousin. Still family. The two locked eyes. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Deshaun whispered, "You found me." Jalen smiled, tears slipping silently down his face. "I never stopped."